Welcome back, everybody, to another special episode of pixelprojectradio. That's right, this is a special end-of-the-year edition. This episode's going to be pretty relaxed and laid back. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite games that I played this year, and I'm going to answer some of the listener questions that I got from you all on Twitter, Instagram, and in the Discord. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed doing the show this year. I won't lie, there have been a lot of frustrations on my end, that is, but you know, this is always really rewarding. This is the third year already that I've been doing this, and just being able to create something in this community space has been a real treat. And you know, there's certainly a possibility that the show will end in the coming years, but until it does, I'm going to have fun doing what I'm doing, and I hope you all enjoy listening. As for State of the Union updates, as it were, this coming year I am going to try to make some changes. I've already started sort of tweaking the formula that I have been doing on the multi-series episodes, so I don't think I have it quite down yet, but we'll see more of that moving forward. There are going to be changes to the Discord incoming in the next year, and that's exciting. There will be new guests, always a good thing. Going to try to be more active, significantly more active on social media outside of just sharing the posts. And that goes for Twitch too. I'm going to try and stream a little bit more on Twitch. Certainly not trying to be a full-time streamer or anything. I mean, for those of you that have seen me, you know that's not going to happen. But, you know, I'm going to try and do that for fun. Keep an eye out on the socials or in the Discord for that. That's probably where I'll announce that kind of thing. And the Patreon. I haven't figured out how I want to change the Patreon, but I will be. I'm not taking anything away for folks that have already joined and are already, you know, getting the benefits. I'm not going to take anything away. I did kind of front load it on to the lowest tier by design. So I do want to make sure that if I do add anything, it's for the upper tiers, so they're getting more bang for their buck. But anyways, I don't know how it'll change, but it will. So keep an eye on that. This is all off the cuff. We're having a loosey-goosey time over here, you know? I'm just a normal guy, right? I'm a normal kind of guy. I'm an average kind of guy. I'm a stand-up kind of guy. I'm a run-of-the-mill kind of guy. I'm a community kind of guy. I'm an off-the-street kind of guy. So we're just having a good time here. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of my favorite games that I played this year. Roll the music.
A little bit of Monica in my life, a little bit of Erica by my side, a little bit.
No, Joey, not that music. Roll some music from a game that I played this year. I gotta hire a better producer. All right, let's jump into it. First, I want to talk about the game that I thought had the best presentation that I played this year, and that is, of course, Tetris Effect Connected.
What could you be afraid of if I'm right here with you? You know everything will change. Show me what you are made of, 'cause I'm always with you. Come on, we could meet today.
Oh, looks like Joey really does know how to work the music. Tetris Effect Connected is a beautiful game, and not to sound trite, but it is an experience. This game is a delight to play. At its core, it is still Tetris, one of, if not the only perfect game to ever exist. But around it, they have added interdisciplinary elements of visual design, of storytelling, of presentation, of sound. They all come together in this beautiful symphony of lights and color, and it's just a pleasure to experience. Sometimes the visuals that take place whenever you're clearing a specific section or level are very abstract, and sometimes they are meant to evoke a feeling. Other times they are more focused on the music and are meant to evoke a sort of implied story. But it's nothing ever too concrete. It's nothing that draws the attention away from the fundamental game that's being played, Tetris. And that's honestly part of why this game is so phenomenal. It's doing some really ambitious things, but it's not calling so much attention to them to be distracting. If you haven't played Tetris Effect already, I definitely think you should give it a try. It is an absolute blast. It's timeless. The connected version even has multiplayer, so you can play with friends. It's a great time. And I couldn't choose anything else for best presentation. It had to be this.
Look at this world we're made for. Come with me, we'll take tomorrow. Everything you want is waiting for you. Take it in.
On to our next category. Most likely to get your roommate to ask, "What the fuck?" And I played a couple games that could realistically fit into this category. You know what I'm saying? But I think it had to go to Catherine Full Body. Look, I love Catherine Full Body. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Well, Catherine is. The Full Body edition is not my preferred way to play, but that's what I played this year. If you haven't checked out the episode on the show about Catherine Full Body, check it out. I thought it was fairly good. In Catherine, you play as main character Vincent Brooks. He is in a relationship with his girlfriend, fiancée, possibly soon-to-be wife, Catherine McBride, and that's Catherine with a K. Their relationship is a bit rocky. Vincent is a kind of, he's an everyman. He doesn't like change. He just wants to have fun. He just wants to hang out with his buds, go home to his wonderful girlfriend. He just wants life to stay as it is. Catherine realizes that they're both getting older and she wants to take the next step towards marriage. And that seems very likely because she tells him very early on that she is pregnant. There's a lot weighing on Vincent's mind, and one night at the bar, he finds this coquettish blonde cutie. And, they start flirting a little bit. The alcohol's flowing, the vibes are right, and one thing leads to another, and suddenly they're back at Vincent's apartment. He's found himself in an affair, but the thing is that he can never quite remember the time they spend together. Very interesting. But none of this is about why your roommate might ask what the fuck. It's more so because there's an equal chance that when they walk in, they might see either a humanoid or demon people, entities with sheep horns, intermixed with the aforementioned coquettish cutie, who, by the way, is named Catherine with a C. That's not confusing or anything. Sending Vincent risque pictures or outright getting into bed with him. And that is reflected on the cover art as well, especially if you have the older versions on PS3 and Xbox 360. They are meant to titillate. It is not an accident. And that's part of this game's thematic identity. But at the end of the day, very possible your roommate might walk in and say, "What the fuck are you playing?" Now, on to our next category. We've got Best OST, Best Original Soundtrack. There are so many different games that I could shout out here, but I wanted to keep it to one game per category. You know what I mean? I didn't want to do any repeat games. Otherwise, one or two games could sweep the whole thing, and that's no fun. So I was thinking about what game might fit here, given the other categories, and I have got to say one of my favorite soundtracks that I experienced this year in a game belongs to none other than Final Fantasy VIII. I'm going to come right out and say it. Final Fantasy VIII is not my favorite soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu, and it's not my favorite soundtrack in the Final Fantasy series, but I think it might be the best one, with 9 being oh so close behind it. The soundtrack in 8 is exquisite. Uematsu is terrific about writing character themes. You listen to any one of his soundtracks and you can tell that a particular character's theme is a personification of who they are. His melodies are really memorable. He has a really unique way of orchestrating things, being super influenced by prog rock, as well as classical music, choir, and things like that. His use of leitmotifs, his use of theme and variations, I could go on. What makes Final Fantasy VIII interesting is that he didn't want to focus on characters as a theme. The focus wasn't, for example, to make Squall's theme, and Irvine's theme, or Norg's theme, although I would have loved to hear that. No, the identity of the soundtrack is really comprised of just one word: love. The core of the soundtrack's identity is about Squall and Rinoa's relationship, and Uematsu's on record as saying that that is the case. Don't get me wrong, there are some beautiful town themes in this game as well, including maybe my all-time favorite town theme in a Final Fantasy game, Fisherman's Horizon. But the way he handles the music surrounding Squall and Rinoa, with the song Eyes on Me, with Waltz for the Moon, it's simply brilliant. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a better soundtrack in all of JRPGs than Final Fantasy VIII. It is simply one of the best, and I'm so thrilled that I got to play it this year. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VIII because of its reputation, I strongly recommend you giving it a try. It's really fun. Unless you are a sicko like me that tries to juggle GFs for maximum AP gainage, then it can get pretty tedious. But other than that, it's a great time. Now, moving on to the most disappointing game. I played more than a couple bad games this year. Some of the worst were Simulacra 1 and Simulacra 2, two games that I found to be profoundly amateurish and lacking any reason for anyone to play them. Gex 64 was a bit of a struggle, although I think that is primarily due to the 64 version. I think I would have had a better time on PlayStation. I don't know. We could always give that a try later. When I'm thinking of games that I was disappointed in, I'm thinking of titles that I went into having genuinely good expectations, wanting to meet them where they were at in good faith and being just let down. And of course, I'm sure many of you saw this coming, but this game for me, the winner of the most disappointing, has to be Final Fantasy XVI. I was extremely excited about this game, and I was let down in a pretty major way. And it's a shame, too, because the demo, which encompasses the first, several hours of the game, 2-3 hours, is really, really strong. It's some of the best that the game has to offer, in fact. Not the best, but some of the best. And it made me think that this was going to be turning point in Final Fantasy. We've had some divisive entries. After 15, my bar was literally on the floor for the series, and I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is the revival that the series needs. But it tried to be too many things at once. It wrote a check that it just fundamentally couldn't cash. It didn't have the funds in its action department. It didn't have the funds in the gameplay department, in the storytelling department. Nowhere. It tried to do too many things and ultimately fell short because of it. The action combat is fun at first, but it's quite shallow and does not live up to other Platinum games such as Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. The themes that it sets up early on are quickly abandoned for what most people are describing as JRPG nonsense. It tries to be Game of Thrones to the point where Game of Thrones up to season 4, I think, was required viewing for the staff that were creating the game. I don't remember the exact requirement, but watching Game of Thrones at least one season absolutely was. It's trying to be so many things, and it just fundamentally fails at all of them. And that's not even talking on some of the more in-depth themes such as mythos and logos that it tries to add in, which ultimately doesn't mean anything. It's just a way of them basically saying, hey, we read about this, so here's a little wink and nod in the game. You like that? It falls short. It really does, and I was extremely disappointed at this entry. My hope for the series moving forward is that they just embrace being a full-on action game, stop trying to be a JRPG. It's not anymore. It's just not. Lay into the action, do an action game, do your own thing, but commit to it. Don't try to be too many things. I really, really hope in the future we look back and see 16 as a sort of stutter step. They tried something new with 15, didn't work. Maybe in the future we'll see that 16 was a step in the right direction, but wasn't quite there, and 17 is where we start to get the full gait of the sprint. I don't know. That's my hope, though. I have hopes for Final Fantasy 17 whenever that may come out. I'm definitely going to play it, but as for 16, what a disappointment. We've got just a couple of more categories I'd like to go through here. Next, shout out to Dave Jackson for this one. We're going with the stinkiest setting. Which game had the stinkiest world? Which game do I think would just smell foul? Which game would I pray for sweet release if I stepped into its universe? And I came up with a couple. I gotta give a special shout out to Parasite Eve. There's a lot of biomatter in that game. Biomatter. And sperm. There's a lot of that. I have a feeling that New York would not smell so nice. Well, does it ever? I don't think so. But it's certainly in the Parasite Eve universe, it deserves a shout out. But there's one that stands head and shoulders above the rest, one that's gotta be just so stinky, and that's Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. One of the most famous shots in this game is in the opening, well, not the very opening, but in one of the opening scenes when main player Ethan Winters is held at a table full of psychotic, possibly dead, we don't know at the time, backwoods members of this family, as they are eating literal intestines, people intestines, pig intestines, blood, guts, and bile, all on the table, and they force feed it to you, and it's fucking gross. Take a look around the kitchen, you find dead crows in the microwave. You find disgusting molded over hamburger helper surprise with probably isn't cow meat, I don't know, in the fridge. It's just a foul, foul place. This has got to be the stinkiest place out of all of them. I mean, I thought about, obviously Parasite Eve. Pizza Tower, I imagine, smells pretty sweaty and greasy, but that's got nothing over human biomatter and intestines and guts, dead crows, and I'm assuming none of them shower. I don't really know. It's never really addressed in the game. That's the kind of questions that I want to see addressed in the next one. I don't really have much else to say on this. It's got to be the stinkiest. It's got to be Resident Evil 7. We've got two more categories. Next, most likely to play all night. And I've got to give this one to one that I have played almost all night, and that is none other than Lost Judgment. This game is an absolute blast, man. I loved the first Judgment. I had a really good time. There were parts of it that felt a little bit clunky and a little bit unpolished. The story at parts wasn't crazy interesting, but they improved on literally everything in the sequel, which is Lost Judgment. You get new fighting styles, and they're all very fluid and feel great in the Dragon engine. The story, at least so far, is super interesting and deals with a lot of high school drama as well as a murder that took place because of bullying. that adds a really interesting angle. The side quests, as you can imagine, are absolutely buck wild. I saved a kitty who got sad because her owner died, and I found a new owner for her, as well as the original owner's mom, who's very sad. I helped these kids stop bullying a teacher who was very mild-mannered but had a secret hidden past of being a delinquent wrestler in the ring, a heel, and who, when he would get mad, would kind of what do they call that? The bald haircut where you've only got hair on the sides but none on the top. Not a comb, like a comb over without the comb over. That would flare up like a Super Saiyan. It's pretty comical. I did a side quest in virtual reality where I played real-life Mario Party and beat up bad guys while a sentient talking dice cat with a southern drawl encouraged me. This game is insane. You never know what to expect from RGG Studios in terms of the silliness and the wackiness, but the story itself knows when to be serious. And that's ultimately at the core what makes RGG such a phenomenal studio. They know when to lean in to the campiness and the wackiness and the zaniness, the goofiness, you might say. And they also know when to tell a really engaging and heartfelt story. And all of that is present in Lost Judgment. This is such a phenomenal game. The only reason that I think people might get turned off is it leads with a stealth mission where you're just following somebody. The main character, Yagami, is a detective after all, so you will be doing tailing missions. But it's not boring like it is in some other games like Skyrim or any WRPG like that. They make it interesting. I definitely recommend this game to anybody that likes the Yakuza universe. And to be honest, you don't even need to play the first Judgment. It certainly helps. You'll know who Kaito is. He's one of your best friends. You'll know who your partners Sugihara and Tsukumo are. You'll know some of the callbacks that they do, but it's really not required. They explain it fairly fine within the opening cutscenes, and if you're more curious, you can look up a plot summary of the first one. If any of this sounds interesting to you though, give it a try. It's really good. And now finally, we're on the last category for the day, Best Writing. This is of no surprise if you know me and you know what kind of games I like, or you've heard me talk about it 1.5 million times already. It's got to be Pentiment. I can't sing the praises of Pentiment enough. It's done by Josh Sawyer and his team at Obsidian, so if you're familiar with Pillars of Eternity or Fallout New Vegas, you know exactly what kind of thing you're getting into, but somehow he does it even better because this is his area of special interest. He has a history degree in this particular time period. This was his focus. This takes place in the Renaissance, roughly around the end of the 1500s, early 1600s in Bavaria, as the fall of the church is coming. The town that we experience in Pentiment, Tassing, is an exception. Their local abbey, the Kearsarge Abbey, is still in business. The scriptorium is still bringing in some funding to keep the church afloat, but that is slowly failing. We play the role of Andreas Mahler, an artist who is out here working to become a master to go home and start a family and open his own shop, but he has some hidden demons of his own as well that he's wrestling with. And on the front of it all, this is a murder mystery, a whodunit kind of deal. I have so much to say about this, and I don't want to get into too much now, as there will be a future episode on this incoming. But let me just say this. If you're a fan of games like Disco Elysium and Night in the Woods, or a fan of Josh Sawyer's work, Pillars of Eternity, Fallout New Vegas, or of historical fiction in general, you owe it to yourself to give Pentiment a try. You'll know within the first 2.5 hours if it's for you. And if it's for you, I promise you, you're going to love it. All right. That's all the awards for today. I wanted to keep this section kind of short and sweet. This is a fun episode, you know? I'm not trying to get too into the weeds with analyzation and all of that jazz. We do enough of that on the main show. Now, I wanted to get into the listener questions. I like to do this once a year. I think we've done it before on the show's birthday and then also at the end of the year, but I think I'm going to keep it to the end of the year moving forward. I put the call out to you on Twitter, on Discord, on Instagram, to submit any questions you have for me about the show, about podcasting, about life, whatever you got. And I actually got a lot of responses, so I wanted to read through all of those. So without further ado, Joey, let's put on a little background music, a little casual music, a little fun music. No, Joey, we're not doing Mambo number 5. You need to pick something else. I'm going to fire Joey after today. All right, let's get into some Q&A. You've got Q's, I've got AIDS, as Andy Bernard might say. We've got a couple from Twitter here. First, from Andre, from the Fine Time podcast. It is, if you give it a chance, a fine time. I'd go so far as to say a great time, but that betrays the name. Andre says this: why is your 8-bit game knowledge a blank slate? Did you get into video games later in life? All right, we're starting out with one that comes right for me in an aggressive way. I want to say this. 2 of the last games released ever on the Nintendo Entertainment System were Wario's Woods in 1994 and Lion King in 1995. I was born in 1992, on December 30th of 1992, in fact. The tail end, I was almost born in 93. I was not playing video games when I was 2 years old, I promise you. My first system growing up was a Sega Saturn, so that's where I experienced most of my first memories. Need for Speed, Scud, Fighters Megamix, Battle Arena Toshinden, Clockwork Knight, things like that. Warcraft 2, and I had no idea how it worked, same with Mech Warrior. And then shortly after that, Game Boy Pocket and PlayStation 1 were the next 2. So you could say that, Game Boy Pocket was essentially just a more portable version of the Game Boy, original Game Boy that is, and that was an 8-bit system. So in a way I do have some experience, but to get back to your question, Andre, I am not that old. I'm only turning 31. So as a kid, I did not have an NES. I didn't know anybody that had an NES. The oldest systems that I knew of that my friends had were Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Sega Mega Drive for all of you non-US folks. The reason that I never kind of went back as a kid was just disinterest. I had everything that I wanted on the current systems. And even after the PS2 and PS3 came out, I still had my Game Boy, I still had the PS1. I had everything I needed. Now, as an adult, I'm slowly going back and getting through some of these. I've played through some of the NES Marios. I'm actually going to be trying to play through all of the Marios from NES up until as far as I can go, at least the mainline ones, this year. I've played a little bit of the original Zelda. I've played a little bit of Punch-Out, so I'm getting there. But to answer your question fundamentally, I just grew up in a different time. And I had everything I needed on the Game Boy, the PS1, the Saturn. I was set. Hit me up if you want to do some NES games on the show. Definitely into that. We'll make it happen. Next, we've got Slade from the Game Club podcast. Slade says this: what has been the most underappreciated game you've played this year? What is one episode you wish more people listened to or interacted with? What do you think was your best episode this year? So we've got a couple questions there. Most underappreciated, I think, has got to be Lost Odyssey. That game, it's talked about in JRPG circles, but outside of that, I don't ever hear much about it. And I've got a lot of problems with it. I don't think it's a perfect game. I don't think it's a perfect JRPG. I think it stumbles a lot. But underneath it all, it's still a really fun experience and very emotional, with some of the best video game writing I've ever seen in a game. And also some of the not so great video game writing that I've seen. It's an inconsistent game, but it's well worth your time. It is so good. I wouldn't call it, a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, but underappreciated, absolutely. Try it out if nothing Try it out for no other reason than the score by Nobuo Uematsu and the 1,000 Years of Dreams. And then stay for the combat system, which is a ton of fun. And stay for Jansen, who has a really great voice actor that improvs like a champ, but is sometimes pretty damn annoying. It's a good time. One episode that I wish more people listened to or interacted with, I'm going to go back into the archives on this one and say Superliminal. I wish more people interacted with our Superliminal episode. I had a great time with that game. It is really, really unique. It's more beautiful than it has any right to be, and it's just a damn good puzzle game. Superliminal would be my choice. And shout out to Unfinished Swan. That's another game that we've done on the show that I had a fantastic time doing. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful game. And, you know, those two, I combed over all the data. I keep an Excel spreadsheet of all the data. Those two are some of our least listened to episodes. So if you've played those games, if you're interested in those games, give the episodes a try. They're earlier on, so the audio quality isn't quite as good, but I still think the discussion is good. So those are my picks. Superliminal, and Unfinished Swan. Now, the last part of Slade's question, what do you think was your best episode this year? I've got two. I'm cheating a little bit. If we're just talking single episode, I think maybe I'm going to go with the Uematsu episode, the music of Nobuo Uematsu. I did that with Jameson from the Bar Silence video game podcast. That's a fantastic podcast, and Jameson is a fantastic person. Definitely check his stuff out. We just had a ton of fun. We geeked out and fanboyed over Uematsu's scores. We kept Final Fantasy stuff to a minimum. We did not explore a ton of Final Fantasy. It's just, the man's output is astounding. He doesn't miss. He just doesn't miss. Even some of his oldest stuff, Cruise Chaser Blasty, you can tell, even though it's on the old PC Engine. I think it's PC Engine. I don't think it was an S. I can't quite remember at the moment. But even on those primitive systems, you can hear that it's Uematsu at the core. And it's so cool to just go through his discography and hear him evolve as an artist, and as a composer, and as a person. It's really great, man. And that episode had me discovering a whole game that he composed for that is now one of my favorite OSTs by him ever. Go check it out. The second part of that is the Final Fantasy VI miniseries. I mean, that's no secret. I think that was a slam dunk. I think that is maybe the best work we've ever done on the show, but it is technically 4 episodes. So if you want 8.5 hours of Final Fantasy VI content with Chris Copleen from the Retro Hangover podcast, one of the most intelligent dudes that I know doing podcasting, and also has a great raunchy sense of humor, check that out. It's very, very good. And that's all from Twitter. We're moving now to Instagram. From Instagram, we've got a question from Nick from the Friday Night Gamecast, another phenomenal show. All of these are phenomenal shows, by the way, just in case I forget to say that. I like all of these. Nick says, what are going to be your most anticipated first-party titles for 2024? Well, unfortunately, Nick, I am not the best person to ask about upcoming games. I tend to be behind the curve most of the time. But there are 2 that I'm very excited for. Persona 3 Reload. Persona 3 is my favorite of the Persona series, with the caveat being that I haven't played 2 yet. I think that is just a phenomenal JRPG, and I cannot wait to play 3 Reload. My big hope is that they updated the mechanics and minimally touched anything else. Keep the music, keep the writing, keep it all. I know they had to replace voice actors for various reasons, some not so great, some run-of-the-mill, but my dream with this remake is that it's just a modernized mechanical version of what made Persona 3 so good. I have it pre-ordered. That's going to be a day one play for me. Look out for an episode on that because it's coming. The other one, Yakuza Infinite Wealth. Of course. I mean, am I going to play it on release? No, because I have a lot of Yakuza to catch up on. I still haven't played 4 through 6. I have played 7, but I haven't played 4 through 6. And I need to get through that, or at least I want to get through that. So I'll pick it up on release, but I probably will not play it for a little bit. Still very excited, though. I can't wait to see more people getting into the series. It's genuinely my top 5 series of all time. if we're talking series. I think I could say that. Next, we've got Keith from the Main Quest podcast. Keith says this: what would you change about your favorite video game? He also asks, what's your "I've had enough of this" trend? What would I change about my favorite video game? I was thinking about Final Fantasy IX because I'm replaying that right now. And really, all of the stuff that I would change has been fixed in the Moguri mod update. That is a phenomenal mod. It's free, and I sing its praises constantly. It breathes fresh air into the game that it previously needed. It's an old game. It was released at the turn of the century, back in 2001. And the age shows a lot in the loading times and the battle animations. Battles on the original PS1 version are slow. They are so slow, and load times are high. The Moguri mod for PC on Steam fixes that entirely, while also giving almost every background in the game an HD update. And some areas even support widescreen too. Well, not widescreen, but like a wider 16:9 aspect ratio. It's really good. That's honestly what I would fix in FF9, and it's been done. So cool for me. My quote, "I've had enough of this trend." I thought a lot about this. I think I'm going to say the trend of taking graphical fidelity over art direction. I know I've talked about this with Andre from Fine Time a lot. I'm a sucker for art direction over graphical fidelity any day of the week. Yes, it's really impressive to see The Last of Us Part 1. Yes, it's really impressive to see Lost Judgment. It's really cool seeing these games that have amazing graphics. But at the end of the day, I prefer things like Pentiment, like Tetris Effect Connected, like Beautiful Joe 2, like Superliminal and Unfinished Swan, that have a unique presentation. They have an identity in how they present themselves, and that's really critically important to art. That would be it. I wish we could get more of that and less of really gritty, realistic graphics. I'm not into it as much. All right, we've got a couple more. We've got Ryan from Listoff. Ryan/Brian. I don't know who wrote this. It was probably Ryan, but I'm going to credit them both because they're both good guys. Which solo titles would you like to see get a sequel? Which series needs to stop making sequels? I would say Pentiment. I would like to see that get a sequel, with the caveat that it's like Final Fantasy, in that it's not like a direct continuation, just a sort of spiritual successor, something set in the same universe but unrelated, something in the same style but completely unrelated, something like that. I do not want Pentiment Part 2, where we, get to play as one of the characters. I don't want that, but I think that would be interesting. I am all in on anything Josh Sawyer and his team does, so I would play that in a heartbeat. As far as what series do I want to stop making sequels, honestly, I don't really know. I can tell you this: I'm not gonna be buying or playing any of the new modern Sonic games. If they keep making Sonic, I'm just not gonna play them. They've kind of strayed away from what made the original Sonic games really special, and I'm just not into it anymore. So maybe that's my answer. Maybe it's Sonic. I don't care if they keep pumping out Call of Duties or, Escape from Tarkov's, like whatever. Like they're gonna be pumping those out until the end of time. Same with Madden, 2K, Final Fantasy probably. Let them keep pumping out. It's fine. I'm not gonna play them, but it's fine. But I think Sonic. I think Sonic should hold off for a while. Maybe reevaluate where it wants to go before starting up with more sequels. Next, we've got Adam from The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog. He asks, would you rather blow a penis every day or have a trumpet for a penis? This is a really good question. And there's an implicit notion here of active versus passive, right? If I have to blow a penis every day, that's an active act. I have to actively do that every single day for the rest of my life. Whereas if I had a trumpet for a penis, that's a passive thing. It just is. I could go about the rest of my day and, do my thing. It'd be weird to be at the urinal and have taps playing every time I went to pee. That would be interesting. It would be startling for the first few times. I don't think I would be welcomed in a lot of establishments after that. And that's not talking about the other sounds it might make, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't know what I mean. So yeah, I think I would take the trumpet for the penis. I think I would take the trumpet for the penis. Lastly, we've got good friend of the show, Cody. Cody doesn't podcast because he's got common sense. He says this: has anyone really been far even as decided to use even go want to do look more like? I think the answer's been in your heart all along, bud. It's been inside. It's been inside you. And that answer is no. Bitch. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, everybody, for writing in so far. Now we're moving on to the biggest area where I got responses, our Discord. Mikey from 0-2 Heroes asks, if David Lynch decided to make a video game, what studio do you think would be the best match for him? This is challenging. I'm not sure that David Lynch would care to make a video game, to be honest, but what would be cool is if we swapped out the bad David and put in the good David. We kick out David Cage from Quantic Dream. We keep everybody else. We keep the people responsible for finding the actors, doing the animation, the coding, all of that. Just kick out David Cage and his writing team, bring in David Lynch and his writing team, and we're cooking, right? We're cooking. Think of something that looks as good as Detroit Become Human, but is as surreal as Twin Peaks can be. Oh, man. I mean, that would kind of be like Life is Strange, but a little crazier. He could probably do Life is Strange, too. Like, I could see David Lynch doing that kind of a game. But that's what I'm doing. I think David Lynch in Quantic Dream, or maybe Don't Nod, that'd be sick. Moving on, we've got another question from Ryan. Ryan is a quizzical kind of guy. He says this: what is the game or series you consider your biggest blind spot? And do you accept my challenge to finally play that game or series in 2024? Buddy, I've got so many blind spots. I've never played or played to completion The Last of Us, Max Payne, Persona 1 and 2, the entire Suikoden series, Odin Sphere, Spec Ops The Line, Infamous. I haven't played so many. Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, Prince of Persia. There are so many that I have not played. But I can tell you this. I've heard Prince of Persia is getting a remake. If that comes out this year, I'll absolutely be playing it. Remake, remaster, I'm not really sure. But definitely. Persona 2, I'm really going to do my best to play Persona 2 and The Last of Us, for sure. I don't know about some of the others. Max Payne, maybe if I have time. Suikoden, I'm kind of holding out for the remasters, but, you know, maybe if I have time, I'm definitely going to make an effort to play Persona 2 and The Last of Us. And I mean The Last of Us 1 and 2, not just the first one. And maybe Red Dead Redemption 2. I've never played that either. Can you believe it? There's so much. There's so much. Next, we've got Ray Ray. Ray Ray says this: why haven't you played The Quiet Man? Well, baby, I'll tell you why. Because we need to set up our episode to do it. I owe it to you to do an episode on this game, one of the games of all time, The Quiet Man, with you. So once we get that set up, let's do it. I've already got it. It was $3 at one point. That's a steal, some might say. Others might deny that, but hey, that's reality, baby. I got it for $3. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Adam from the Revival and Extinction podcast, he wants to know, what is a game series that has left a lasting impression? What are some fantastic franchises that have one or two entries that really rub you the wrong way? And finally, have you played any Garfield games and what were your thoughts? Lot to unpack here, one at a time. Series that has left a lasting impression, maybe the Xeno series. You know, I'm still not done with it. I haven't even touched Xenoblade yet, Xenoblade Chronicles, Chronicles X, you know, haven't touched that, but Xenogears and Xenosaga scratched me right where I itched. They instantly became some of my favorite games of all time. They're thematically linked, but not story linked. Kinda. It gets a little nebulous at certain parts, but I adore that series so much. It's easily one of my favorite of all time, and I think about them a lot because in some ways it's everything I want in a JRPG. A series or franchise that has one or two entries that really rub me the wrong way that I otherwise like, BioShock. Easily BioShock. I loved BioShock 1. Everything I've seen from 2 looks really cool, although I haven't played it yet. And then Infinite came along and ruined it all with generic gameplay and a story that I thought was bad. Not good. Not handled well, I should say. Maybe is better. Real bummer. And lastly, have you ever played any Garfield games, and what were your thoughts? I really hate to admit this. I have not. Now, okay, settle down. Relax the booze. I will say this. On my shelf, there is a PS2 sealed copy of Garfield Lasagna World Tour. Obviously, that's not going to get opened, but I might emulate it. I do have both Garfield carts. We talked about doing them for a game night, for a Pixel Project Radio game night. That is very much on the table. We just have to, set it up. It's tough to schedule, man, I mean, scheduling is the worst part of anything, ever. But I do plan on playing them. I've got one of them downloaded. It's ready to go. I could quit this recording right now and play it. I'm not going to do that because I'm on a bit of a schedule, but I could. So unfortunately, no. I've only read the comics, and I still own many of the comics and have watched the TV show. And side note, I'm so pissed that Chris Pratt is fucking voicing Garfield. What the fuck is that shit? What happened? What unholy deal did he make to become the voice acting face of Hollywood? He just does his own voice. I don't know, man. Garfield already had a voice, all right? And that's Lorenzo Music. It always will be Lorenzo Music, all right? Never mind that he passed away. It's still him. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Next we've got Whooper, friend of the show, good friend of the show, cool Discord member, cool streamer too, on Twitch. You can check them out. It's technically VV instead of a W, VVOOPER. They do a lot of Twitch streams for Splatoon and Final Fantasy. It's a good time. Check them out. Here's what Whooper has to say. The professor of my video game culture class in college said that EA Sports games are the frat bros of video games. Can you provide similar analogies for other genres or categories of games, or even specific franchises or series? I don't make the rules. Well, in some ways, Whooper, you do make the rules. You asked this question. You demanded this of me. But in a larger sense, there are no rules. Fuck it. Fuck it. We ball. First of all, that's really apt. EA Sports games are definitely the frat bros. Absolutely, no question. So I had to start with music because that's what I know best. Unfortunately, music is probably MMOs, It's a huge time sink. You're going to be spending a lot of money that you'll never get back. There's always tasks to do, and you need to be extremely proficient both as a solo and an ensemble member. So, much as I hate to say it, music, MMOs. Now, theater, on the other hand, any JRPG/3D action game that is primarily anime, where people are shouting, being loud, wearing bright colors and being loud, and everything's fast and people are acrobatic and they're shouting and they're loud and they're impeccable hair and they're all attractive and they're very loud. It's got to be that, It's got to be that. Anybody that went to the college that I went to and spent any time in the music library knows that I am right. All right, let's see. Gym Bros. I know this is cliche to say, but it's got to be Call of Duty, right? They just want to get good. They just want to shoot shit. Fucking masculine guns. Fuck yeah, dude. Fucking America. Caveat, side note, they do not understand Spec Ops: The Line. They don't get it. It's not for them. They don't care. The multiplayer. They like the multiplayer, but that's it. That's all. It's funny. I roomed with one of those fellas in my freshman year, and he played a ton of Call of Duty and Skyrim, and talked about getting huge and eating, double Chipotle protein. It was a time. What else? Art majors. I think art majors. Walking sims, probably. Walking sims. This could also be lit majors too. literature majors, walking sims, narrative-based games, things like that. They're not interested in being flashy. They're interested in telling a story, thematic identity. It's the shit that I like. Should have done that instead of music. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe, though. Maybe. No, I'm just, not for real. I'm kidding. Unless, science, any kind of science, chemistry, engineering, anything like that. Those games that I don't understand that a good friend of the show, Charlie, likes. Your Satisfactories, your Factory Sims, Factorio, I think is another one. Satisfactory, Minecraft, things like that. Things where you're building, things where things can get really big brain, and I get lost very quickly. I don't understand those games. But you all do. You all do. Yeah, I think that's good. I think I'm confident in all of those, especially theater. Definitely confident in theater. Maybe not music. I mean, rhythm games would be too on the nose. You can't. And in fact, a lot of musicians that I know dislike rhythm games because, it's not really accurate to the experience. The button presses add in some latency, so the rhythm is not really ever quite spot on. It's a whole thing. But I think MMOs would work for them. That's a great question that I'm going to bring to the Discord, actually. As soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to type it in. Okay, we have got two more. And before I end with these final two, I did want to say, once again, thank you everybody for listening, for being a part of the community. I quite literally wouldn't be doing this without you. Of course, creation is its own reward. I get that, and I agree with it. But at the same time, this is a ton of work, and to see it pay off by people appreciating it and saying, "Hey, you're doing a good job. I like what you're putting out." That's what keeps me going at the end of the day. Otherwise I would be doing all of this without releasing a show. I could analyze games without putting anything out. I could have a good time reading and comparing literature to, I don't know, Nier or Xenogears and have a ball, but the fact that you all enjoy what and are supportive of what we're doing over here means a lot. So honestly, this is it's all for you, and I can't express how grateful I am. Last two. Well, technically there's a couple questions here. First, we've got Poppy the Keaton. Here's what he says. When Ben left the podcast, how difficult was the decision to keep going on your own? He has another question, but I want to get to this first. I never really, talked about it on the show, partly because it didn't really need to. I'm not trying to air out any kind of laundry. It was an amicable split. We both decided that it was for the best. I fielded the idea first, and Ben agreed pretty quickly. It just got to a point where he wasn't able to dedicate the time to the show, whether playing the games for the show, coming to record, interacting online, personal and work life just took precedence, and that's fine. There were some frustrations on my end, specifically at first, but that's all gone away. I mean, it was never messy, is what I'm trying to say. It was never messy. It was never one-sided. It was a mutual decision. At first, I wasn't sure what to do because I knew I wanted to keep going. I wasn't ready to hang up the microphone just yet. But, I've always said that I much prefer podcasts with a locked-in lineup, like locked-in guests. And in fact, explicitly, I did not want to do what I'm doing now. I did not want it to be me with a new guest every week. And I still, to be honest, I still feel that way. I still would much rather have a dedicated co-host because you get to build that back and forth, that relationship, those communication skills. You develop an identity. You become a partnership. And I can certainly do that with guests, but it's tough because there's a new guest every week. Talking to different people, it's always going to be a different experience. No two people are the same. No two relationships are the same. So there's difficulty there. And of course, the idea of scheduling a new guest every single episode, I mean, to this day, it is still very, very challenging. I reach out to guests regularly, like four 5 months or more in advance to figure things out. It's just how it needs to be. But I really would like to have a permanent co-host. It's just, it hasn't happened yet. So that was definitely a concern, but I wanted to give it a try because we were in the middle of the Final Fantasy VI episodes, which turned out to be phenomenal, as I've said before. I thought briefly about changing how the show fundamentally works, but, all in all, I decided to give it a try. I said I'll give it to the end of March, I think I said. Once we get to the anniversary of the show, I'll give it to March 30th, 31st, and we'll see how I feel. And how I felt was, I could keep going. I could keep doing this. So there was a lot to consider. I still think about it a lot, but here we are. We keep going. As they say, ball is life. Fuck it, we ball. Which effectively means fuck it, we live. And Keaton asks one more question. He says, which movie or TV franchise would you like to see get a prequel or sequel done as a video game, or perhaps a missing gap filled in via a video game? This is an interesting one. I mean, we almost had that with The Sopranos, Road to Respect on PS2, and that turned out to be really bad, laughably bad. I think in the right hands, that would be phenomenal. Like a Sopranos style, I don't know, a GTA clone would be a little too predictable. Maybe a brawler like Yakuza could work. Maybe even a story-based thing, like some kind of a story action hybrid like Quantic Dream mixed with Yakuza or something. I think that would be really cool. Another one, and this is just recency bias because I just finished it, would be The Boys, the Amazon Prime series with Homelander and all that. I think that would make a freaking great video game. I don't know off the top of my head who should do it. There's a big part of me that kind of doesn't trust a lot of the superhero game makers to make something that would be good for that setting. I don't, whoever worked on Midnight Suns, the game is fine, but I wouldn't want them near this project. It would need to be closer to something like The Last of Us almost. But I think that would be a phenomenal game to play. And have they considered making a game based on the Super Mario movie? Super Mario Bros. The movie, the game? I don't know. I think there's money to be made there. I don't know. Nintendo, call me. And last but certainly not least, we've got Eric from the Unlockables, the definitive Kingdom Hearts podcast. Here's what he has to say. Was there a game you played this year that you went into with preconceived expectations about the experience only to come out of it surprised? There's another question, but I'm going to do this first. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is the honest answer, the obvious answer, and the honest answer. But another one was Bayonetta. I went into Bayonetta thinking that I wasn't going to be super into it. Not because it's a woman. I mean, come on. Most of you listening should know me better than that. But I'm not an action game kind of guy. Bayonetta seems a little over the top in Smash, and Hideki Kamiya is a weirdo. I really thought that I wasn't gonna like it, and I came out the other side really, really liking it. That was one of my favorite games. I mean, it's not in the top 5 that I played this year, but it's one of my favorites that I played. That is a genuinely good action game. And Bayonetta as a character was nowhere near as grating as I thought she would be. She's great. I'm all in. I can't wait to do Bayonetta 2. I might replay Bayonetta 1 first and then move on to 2, and then eventually 3 with all the baggage that comes there. But yeah, I was shocked at how much I like Bayonetta. And shocked at how much I didn't like Final Fantasy 16. Oh, I wanted it. I was rooting for it so hard. Lost Odyssey. I mean, speaking of that, Lost Odyssey I thought I would love. I wanted it to be a 10 out of 10. I desperately did, but it did so much that worked against itself that I just couldn't. It's still a great game. Don't get me wrong. A must play. But it's just really inconsistent. But yeah, Bayonetta is probably the coolest answer here. Play Bayonetta if you haven't yet. If you're one of those like me that just puts games off, play Bayonetta. It's really good. And lastly, Eric says this. Many years down the road, Hollywood decides to make a movie based on Pixel Project Radio. Which actor would star as yourself? Who would direct? Who else would be in the movie and who would portray them? All right, I thought about this a lot. I really did. So I've got a good answer. So for me, who would play me? I'm going to go John Goodman. John Goodman's going to play me. I think he can nail the part. He's a bigger guy. I mean, he's lost weight recently, though. But anyway, I mean, it doesn't matter. He's John Goodman. You know, he can get a little unhinged. We've all seen The Big Lebowski, right? Walter. He played a great Walter. I could use some of that unhingedness. I could use some of that unhinged plus a little Dan Connor. You know what I mean? I think John Goodman would be a great choice. Obviously, Ben was a big part of this, and even Vince too, in this. So for Ben, I'm gonna have to say probably John Goodman. And for Vince, if we can use people who aren't alive anymore, if those are the parameters of the question, I would say maybe for Vince we could get John Goodman. I think that would be a great choice. It's very fitting. I think nobody would expect it, but I think he would give a fantastic performance. Just a couple of others that should probably be in the film, you know, whether it's virtual or otherwise. Let's go with Eric. Eric is the question submitter, and you know, Eric is he's not quite the same build as me. He's a smaller guy, reddish hair, very pleasant and friendly demeanor. So when I think of all of those in a row, I immediately think of group John Goodman. I think he would do an amazing job playing Eric. I think it's an obvious choice, to be quite honest. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I look at
John Goodman
and I look at Eric. It's like a mirror. Dave Jackson would be another one. Dave was one of the earliest podcasters I met. I went on to his show, A Top 3, and I was around before he even made Tales from the Backlog, baby. I remember when he ran some ideas past me, so I got to put in Dave. And of course, I mean, freaking Dave, dude. He is a very fit guy. He likes sports. He's a big basketball guy. Well, he's a big all sports guy, but I'm pretty sure basketball is a thing for him. He's worldly. He lived in Korea. He was teaching in Korea for a while. And all of those put together, plus those locks, dude. Like, if you haven't seen Dave in a while, Dave's got some locks. He's got some nice hair. So all of those together, I don't see how it could be anybody other than Peter Griffin. John Goodman. It's an obvious choice, but it's the one that's got to be made, right? Now, directing, this one could have gone a couple different ways. I thought about, it would be so funny if it were David Lynch. Oh, if we wanted some great dialogue, it could be Quentin Tarantino, and podcasting is dialogue, so that's pretty important. The Coen brothers could have been exciting. Maybe even Greta Gerwig. That would be fun. But at the end of the day, it can't be any of them. I love Greta Gerwig's stuff. It can't be her. I really like everybody that I've mentioned. Coen brothers, Tarantino, all great. But it's got to be Wes Craven. No, I'm just kidding. It's John Goodman. Once again, I want to thank everybody for writing in. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you, listeners, for being a part of this journey, of this podcasting experience. Thank you to the patrons. Thank you to the Discord members. Thank you to those who follow on social media. Thank you to those who collaborate with me and ask me to collaborate with them. Thank you to the people that don't do any of that but still just listen. Genuinely, I mean it. Thank you to all of you. This is, it makes me feel so warm and practically want to tear up thinking of how supportive this community can be at large and how amazing it is to just create something and throw it out into the world. And whatever happens, happens. And what's happening here is, some people really like it. I can't tell you how that makes me feel. So with that, let's close out 2023. We're going to move into 2024 with some really big stuff. I'm very excited. We're going to try and tighten up the audio quality, tighten up the focus on the show, tighten up the schedule. I'm really excited for this coming year. It's going to be a make or break kind of year, and I think it's going to make it more than it's going to break it. So until I see you next time, for the final time of 2023, I am Rick Firestone, your host of Pixel Project Radio. Thank you for being you. Happy New Year. See you in 2024.
John Goodman.